Deep, it's a pleasure to have you with us. How have you been?
All good, yeah. God has been kind. It's always good to speak to you, man.
Same here, Deep. I'm particularly excited about this conversation, right? I mean, because there are two very interesting things that you're doing. One is femtech, or female care and women care, one segment, and of course D2C, right? I think that's the buzzword, right? And that's the new gold rush in India, and that doesn't necessarily ask for pedigree, right? So yeah, I think very excited for this conversation.
Likewise. Yeah, it's exciting times. Like we're happy that it's finally happening. While we're in the party.
Right. Deep, before we dive into the questions, why don't you take me through your background, right? I mean, you've been an entrepreneur, right? And you've done like a bunch of things. I think it'll be interesting to know some of that.
No, absolutely, yeah. So yeah, hi guys. I'm Deep. I'm the founder of Sirona Hygiene. As of now, in this avatar for me, we're known for solving unaddressed, intimate, and menstrual hygiene issues faced by women, and we do it with our unique products. That's how we are known in this space. Uh, Largely as toilet hygiene and intimate and menstrual hygiene. Those are the three subcategories. In toilet hygiene, we came up with India's first stand-in pee device called Pee Buddy. We have a design patent on it, and today about 2 million odd units have been sold, and it helps women to stand in pee. So no more wiping of seat and making chairs. And the same brand is now trying to revolutionize the whole toilet experience for girls, right? I mean,
Right.
it is a torture if you're traveling
Yes.
out with your wife or your daughter on a road trip. It gets very difficult, right? So we have the standard P devices, we have toilet seat covers, we have toilet deodorizers and disinfectants now. So that's
Right.
what we're doing in the toilet hygiene space. In the intermittent menstrual hygiene space, came up with India's first herbal period pain relief patches so that girls don't have to depend on hot water bottles and painkillers. Followed by a range of sustainable menstrual hygiene products like Sirona menstrual cups, which today is used by over 500,000 Indian women,
Right.
and tampons, liners, natural intimate washes, so on
Sure.
and so forth. And we also have a family hygiene brand. So this is what we're doing right now. And to answer your question, the background, man, it was serendipity. How this, fell in my lap, or maybe the category chose me.
Right.
As a person, I did my master's from Australian National University. After that, got into events.
Right.
And 2006 to 2010 was events. I exited that business in 2010. Sold my stake. Moved into handmade carpets with my wife. She still
Right.
does carpets for hotels across the world.
Right.
Uh, and then this Peabody just happened. So that was the first
Nice.
product. It was born on a road trip.
Nice. Nice. Okay. That's a story I want to actually pick up, right? And that possibly is my first question to you, right? How did Sirona happen, right? I think was it more you mentioned, right? It was serendipity, right? More observational, more experience. Take me through the method to the and the maths to the madness, right? Take me through that, please.
Yeah. No. I think, like I said, that word describes my life beautifully.
Sure.
It's all serendipity. It's almost as if it was meant to happen. It's the first.
Right.
My favorite joke is that my parents knew I'll be in the P business because that's why they named me Deep. If you spell it backwards, it becomes P. You
Right.
know. So I said, right when I was born, I was meant to be in the P business. Then
Right.
we came back, got into events, and in events also we didn't do the private events. We did more corporate events.
Right.
So fashion shows, concerts,
Sure.
launches, etc. And when you would do these concerts, especially if they
Right.
were outdoor, you would realize that the porta potties, the portable toilets,
Yes.
after half an hour, 40 minutes, it's very difficult for women to use, especially because they have to
Yes.
sit and do it. So
Right.
maybe I got into events also because I was supposed to be eventually doing the
Sure.
previous
Sure.
route. And then handmade carpets, when we traveled, incidentally, during our pregnancy, we had to travel, and we even had a miscarriage because of UTI. So
Right.
that experience was also very close. And then the
Right.
second time we were traveling, I noticed that no matter how you travel, even if you take, you know,
Sure.
business class tickets or you stay at the best of hotels, if you're
Right.
pregnant, you just can't sit and stand. So that was also something that life taught me, life made me experience early
Right.
on. And my mother had arthritis. So for
Okay.
me, all the experiences were so closely felt that on
Right.
this fateful 2013 road trip, we were four couples traveling together, Delhi Jaipur Highway.
Right.
And I was kidding with everyone saying, see how men are so blessed, because we were drinking whatever we wanted to drink. Girls were
Right.
not even having water.
Right.
So I said, God loved men more. That's how, our body is so
Right.
better designed, for the
Right.
lack of correct words. And so friends were suggested she had seen someone in Europe use a plastic makeshift contraption bottle to
Right.
stand in pee as a trekker. And
Right.
I think that thought stayed. By then, I had already committed myself to a couple of other projects.
Sure.
One was into home healthcare, and the second was a
Right.
holiday home project.
Right.
And I decided in 2015 that I want to exit all of that.
Right.
And then the company was born with the first product as the stand-in pee device,
Right.
followed by the period pain relief patches, intimate washes, disposal bags for clean and hygienic disposal of sanitary products, and rest, as they say, my friend, is history. Not that glorious one
Getting
yet.
made. Getting made.
History in progress, yes. Work in progress. That's how Sirona was born. It was born out of personal experiences.
Right.
And what started off as a journey to solve problems for my wife and my daughters and my mother, what has now become a life's mission.
Interesting. Deep, what amazes me, I've had the chance of interacting with you, beyond this conversation, right? I've happened to know you at a degree better, right? But it's always difficult when you're catering for a market like this, right? Where you're not necessarily the first user. It's very difficult to go out and kind of say put it out on the canvas, right? That this is going to happen, that is going to happen, right? It doesn't naturally come to you, right? And you chose a category which is so complex, right? To a degree that it's almost taboo. And I think what you were talking about is, I mean, it's so difficult. It's so difficult, right? Correct. So it's so difficult to go out and even communicate about it, right? How was that phase? I mean, take me through the product development journey, right? I'm sure it must have been very complex.
Well, I'd say that, let me break it into two parts. One, not being the first user of the product, but you'd be surprised that for me, when it comes to Buddy, I think amongst the first ones to use. I think when I still go and use it just to test if it's going fine, while God has endowed us differently. But I think, for anybody trying to do any startup, it's not always necessary that you would be the first user of that product. So what is important is, do you understand what the customers are seeking, and then are you willing to do whatever it takes? In my case, the fact that we were a team of men between me and Mohit, my co-founder, both boys, and trying to solve this, I think we knew that we'd have to try far harder to. So I think our level of preparedness was even higher because of this so-called handicap, which for us, we don't see it more as a man versus a woman trying to solve a problem. We just see, when I had sold events, it was just an agency trying to sell events. When I got into handmade carpets, it was a team trying to sell carpets. When it was home healthcare, it was a team trying to sell this. Now it was about a team trying to solve problems for women, So for me, it was always about trying to solve the problem over, who am I and who am I solving it for? And because in this particular case, these were very taboo topics, very strong taboo, right? I mean, imagine it still is not spoken very freely. I mean, if I talk about, cleaning the seat, wiping the seat is easy. Women standing and peeing is a different ballgame. There was nobody talking about it back then.
Absolutely.
And we are a conservative society. So it has, I'd say there have been fair bit of, I would say, challenges that we face more from men than women, because for women, it was more about, the solution works for me. It's working. And they are the ones who single-handedly built it. In terms of product prototyping, which is your second question, we've experimented with a lot of shapes, right? From paper boards to chana jor garam, So at the end of the day, we just need a funnel, man. And if you've ever, taken a ride on a bike, which I've done for the initial few, months of my life, corporate life. So, whenever you run out of the fuel, that's the first thing you take, the funnel, right?
Right.
So that was always there. And then there were friends, family, and fools who were willing to try. A lot of friends and their wives who were very happy to give us feedback and bricks and bats. Those worked, and today we have a couple of variants of Buddy which we sell.
Interesting. So say from what so the trials, right, that you had, right? So initial concept. Tell me more about institutionalization. I mean, how did you institutionalize this, right? In the sense that, what were the early days like, right, of getting the production right, ensuring that, also the fact that we're a culturally very divided society, right? And also the fact that India operates at many layers, right? And of course, I will, I have a question around, say, the Bharat bit as well, towards the later half of the conversation, right? But, Bharat is, we are a very complex economy, right? How did you institutionalize this, right? And I would want to know a little more about, the communication process that you built around, right? Tell me a little more.
So I'd say, it's like the great Steve Jobs said, it's only in hindsight that you can join the dots, So now I can make all the sense out of it. But back then, I don't think there was any playbook. The only thing I'd say that we had as an advantage was my little bit of background into running non-funded businesses, where the thesis was that it's only on customer dollar that you can run the business. So the whole process started around saying, where can we find a customer for it?
Right.
And that list was made. So there's still, if you look around in my cabin also right now, there'll be everywhere you'll find things written on the walls. We're like, we write stuff on the wall that comes on in our mind. And back then also we did the similar stuff. We made a list of where are the people who are aggrieved by it. So there was travel, where obviously you are aggrieved.
Sure.
There is medical, because I'd seen medical, pregnancy and arthritis. And then obviously business as usual, like when you're going to, offices and you're traveling by road. So made a list of all those guys and slowly started talking to all of them by myself. I mean, it was like a small team, just 3-4 of us who started it, right?
Sure.
So divided tasks, and we said, let's start approaching every funnel, one funnel at a time, one person responsible for one, without knowing what will come out of it. And in hindsight, all I would say is that, what worked with our case was the fact that we stuck around. I have a theory that if you really want to be successful at something, you should, that 4 things that I usually say that, one is you should be at it for at least 1,000 days.
Right.
My statement is that, and I believe in it, that, if you're at it, you will crack it. That's that's there in all my mugs, etc., which I keep saying.
I'm going to write that down.
No, the first one is 1,000 days. No matter what you're doing, you do something for 1,000 days, you end up having all the learnings that are required.
Right.
So for us, what worked back then was, because we said the hustle continues.
Right.
So opportunities kept coming, and we were aligned in our head that we're not giving it up.
Right.
Some of them materialized, some of them didn't. Like the most obvious one was that, especially with stand-in PE, we thought it's a problem. I asked 10 women, all of them said, I asked 100, even 100 said yes, it's a problem.
Right.
So when I took it to the stores, I thought, that's the next Bill Gates in the making. Everybody rejected that.
Right.
Everybody rejected the product, saying, well, kya ye kaam karega, nahi karega, will it work, will it not work, all of that. And obviously, because what we did was, we didn't name the product feminine. We didn't make it into the so-called notions of feminine colors, etc. Pink. We are shouting from rooftops, green. Really loud, bright, big font packaging.
That's a great story, Deep. Tell me this, right? So how were the initial days of financing, right? I mean, you've been a fan, like you highlighted, right? You've been a fan of bootstrapping your way through, right? At least in the initial days. And, my sense is, around the time I think you were kind of building this, there possibly was a lot of resistance and a lot of naysayers, as they say, right? That you would have come across, right? Who would have found it very difficult to believe, right? So how did you finance the initial phase of the journey?
No, sir. Initially, it was all about us and our money only. And I think everybody should ideally try to do that. And just to go back to my previous point of 1,000 days, I said there are 4 things, that by the time it was about starting Sirona full time, those learnings were very well entrenched in my system, having done, 2-3 businesses, out of which 2 were successful and 1 didn't go anywhere. And I think a common factor was, that this is a 1,000-day run. And that's out of the 4 things. What I say is that first and foremost is, please be sure that you have availability full time for 1,000 days to run this. If you have those 1,000 days available, because, you tend to face all the challenges in those days. So first year, the euphoria is high, you're getting all the attention. It all just goes in that. Second year, the fruits of first year are going to, come out, and you will see some things work, some things didn't. Third year is when you start to get a little comfort. So first is, 1,000 days. Second, in our case was also that, we were clear that let's not get too much into analysis paralysis, especially when you're trying to do anything which is away from the ordinary. There's no rule book for you to follow. So what's the worst? I think decisions can only go right or wrong, right? So we were like, we experimented a lot. So to answer your question on how did we experiment? Yeah, we had this, like I said, on all across the walls, there's all glass walls that we live in, and now in our office, and we just writing whatever comes to our head. And the single philosophy here is, if there is an idea, without trying it, we'll not throw it out of the box. So similarly, we thought that we'll take it to this, to stores and to doctors and online everywhere. Some things worked, some didn't. And what worked, we just kept building on that. So
what was the key learning? What was the key learning in that phase? I mean, and while you're bootstrapping, see, I mean, where I'm essentially coming from is that you're in a very resource constrained environment, right? And as soon as you start talking of a product play, right, and like the one you are in, right, there's a certain capex which is involved, right? There is a certain opex which is involved, right? And a lot of money tends to get blocked in working capital, right? Which is essentially where a lot of business go wrong, right? So I particularly, so what are some of those learnings, Deep, specifically, right? And I'm sure you've hacked your way through, right, in a very interesting way. I think possibly a few learnings I think will be very helpful, and that also helps us understand the foundation better, right?
Sure,
So yeah,
sure.
just a little bit of that.
Well, so like I said, you can't really look at anybody's playbook and try to follow it, but you can just learn from them. So in our case, what has worked in our favor, and I think whenever I start something again, these things will stay core. Bootstrapping in the initial phase, gets you to think outside the box. The things which you're thinking are regular and money can buy. Things that money can't buy at times, that's where, your redemption lies. So the whole point in our case is bootstrapping lets you strive 10x, 20x, 50x harder.
Sure.
So that's been the biggest learning. Second has been, the whole this 1,000-day philosophy gave us one core belief that eventually things will fall in place. So don't give up.
Sure.
So persistence is one of the biggest virtues that you need, and some of these other things are only incidental.
Right.
Bootstrapping helps you think outside the box. Being clear in your head that's going to take 1,000 days gives you a little bit of a peace that I'm taking some decisions. Some of them are going right, some of them are going wrong. Let's not be married to either. Knowing that analysis paralysis lets you be a little more, I would say, risk taking rather than risk averse. And startups should be more nimble, fast, fail fast, try fast sort of philosophy.
Right.
So those 3-4 learnings I would say have been very instrumental, and in helping us. The fourth is hiring the right team. Very important,
Absolutely.
I mean, at the end of the day, we are just whatever we are today is because of one, our customers, and second is a great team that we were able to onboard early on.
Right.
So bootstrapping lets you pick on all those 4 very carefully, right? Because you don't have endless money available.
Right.
The talent that you attract initially, especially the good ones who stay around, are really in it for your passion, are really in it for your purpose.
Right. Absolutely, and I think that's the most difficult one, right? I think I kind of buy your point, right? That team is the most important constant, right? And that's something that you have to, and getting that right at the early stage, I think, is so much more important. Deep, a very interesting run through of the early days of Sirona, right? And of course now you're in a very different position, right? There are a couple of rounds of funding that has happened and stuff like that, right? So tell us a little more about phase 2 of Sirona, right? Where are you currently, right? There are many products that are there, right? So how's the bouquet grown? What's happening on the distribution front, right? So it's and also there's a lot of digital distribution that you're doing, right? So what are some of those things that are happening? So take us to that.
So I would say the next few years, like I said, we see ourselves that there is no way why we shouldn't do a 100 crore revenue company in the next couple of years, and we believe that online is one of the strongest channels that's going to be. For us at least, because the kind of products that we have, we discussed early on that we are a conservative society still, no matter what we say in our articles. So we believe online is where customers would seek solutions to their problems, and we'd want to be in their zip code. So for us, it's going to be online in terms of aspirations. I've already shared, but in terms of category, we want to stay focused on women, intimate and menstrual hygiene related issues that they're facing. And the subcategory of that shall be, we want to revolutionize the toilet related issues that girls are facing. It's a huge limiting factor, and intimate and then menstrual. Those are the areas where I would say that you would see a lot more work coming from our portfolio to help more women move about freely, and at the same time we'd want to scale our paid forward initiatives to another level. We believe that what good is an organization that is only making money? And when you're making a lot of money, then you give it is another thing. But for us, it's in our DNA. We've been doing our paid forward campaigns for the last 2 years.
Right.
Impacted about 10,000 odd lives last year alone around COVID, with either information or products around sustainable menstrual hygiene or around how to manage better. That's what Sirona wants to do. I mean, we just want to say women face problems. If you don't have a solution for it, please come to us and we'll solve it for you.
Right.
We'll continue to do it online. We'll go offline as well. I mean, we are battling. We were just still weighing those options out.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Deep, how many lives are you touching right now? And what percentage of sales, for example, is coming from online, and what percentage is coming from offline, right?
Well, we are 90% online. And I would say in terms of lives there, I mean, there are many customers who've been, very helpful, benevolent, kind to our solution.
Right.
Mentioned Peabody would say about 2 million units have been sold. The Sirona cups are used by about 500,000 Indian women.
Right.
So over millions of customers have made us what we are. And in our paid forward, especially, we're coming up with a very ambitious campaign to impact another 1 million lives through our work directly or indirectly. And that's what we want to do. But I think more than numbers, I think the goal is far more important right now. We're saying that the stigma around this feminine hygiene issues needs to break.
Sure.
And that's our goal. In the process, there are 400 million women in India, so we're far away from the mark where we can be.
Absolutely.
And let's see how many do we really end up helping or reaching out to.
Interesting. Deep, when you talk about online sales, right? And I think this is a very difficult one. Pretty much every single startup, which is operating in the D2C category, right? Which is wanting to build that relationship with the customer, straight up, right? They don't want any intermediary. They want to understand the customer firsthand. There's so much more intelligence, right? And they do want to follow a traditional path and process, right? Now, the biggest of all of these complexities is that, do you operate your own ecosystem where you continue to offer, which could be, say, your own website, your own e-commerce store and stuff like that? Or do you continue to sort of operate, which is more coexistence, right? But do you continue to sort of build your existence on platforms like Amazon and, and Flipkart and, a bunch of others, right? How did you prioritize, right? How did you prioritize? What do you think is the right way to sort of look at it?
I would say, it's like this is such a fast changing ecosystem right now,
Sure.
That there is again no one formula that fits all. I would say that when you sit down, and again, I'm saying stay away from 4 things like 1,000 days, analysis paralysis, have a good, team of advisors and have a great team. So, what was relevant 4 years ago is no more the rule book anymore. So when this whole D2C story started, there was a lot of focus to say, no, build a customer on your own. And early on, it was more about let's sell on marketplaces. So Amazon, Flipkart, etc. When these guys came in, they changed D2C playbook by saying, let's take it direct to consumers.
Right.
And we had some more D2C brands who started selling from their website, and the shift started to go there to say, Amazon doesn't share a lot of data with you of your customers, so might as well sell from your website. Then everybody started realizing that selling from our own website is also a very, it's a very heavy burn business. You're not always profitable because Facebook, ROAS or Instagram and all these other platforms, ROAS doesn't justify what you're able to fulfill on Amazon. So the call was customer at what cost, Eventually they will have to, if they will move to buying stuff off Amazon, we might as well let them buy there. So this story has been evolving, right? In today's world, I would say that you should play the book which you are most confident of with your team, the skill sets that you have right now. Just because an X brand has done very well on their website, going that route, and when you don't have that core capability in-house, I would say it's better to say, I can do on Amazon, Flipkart, I know that business, I'll scale there and eventually start selling from our end. That's what we did. While some of our contemporaries who have launched similar products started selling from their website, raised a lot of money, we said, no, we want to grow it profitably. So it's also about, it should be about what is it that you're chasing. We are chasing to build a profitable company. We've been profitable for the last 3 years. We are chasing a company that grows year on year at a certain multiple. We are doing it. And we are saying that while we are doing it, we should ideally not get reckless, in this quest of being the first or the fastest or the highest growing, because that's no more the moat anymore,
Right.
So your playbook should be about what assets do you have, what resources do you have, what cards do you have. If you have that capability, a blend is a very good model, honestly. You have customers from your website, you can interact with them much better, you get feedback much faster. But if you're doing it at the cost of being in a position where if you don't get money tomorrow, you shut the business down, I would say stay away from it. Have a blend.
Right. Interesting. No, Deep, I think that's a very well put point, right? I think that element of prioritizing is very, very critical. One thing that is very common and constant, right? And I think this is something which is growing all the more, is that in that quest of building a very strong consumer relationship and a bond, right? Earlier it used to be like a distribution play, right? So you were essentially prioritizing over what your packaging is going to, how you're going to stack it over a certain rack, what is the regionality of a certain product and stuff like that, right? Now that doesn't necessarily exist anymore. I think a lot of D2C brands are using, for example, platforms like Instagram to build that direct relationship, right? There is a beautiful narrative a lot of these brands are creating, right? Content is picking up, right? My sense is that we're going to have 100,000 brands that are going to come up in next, say, a year and a half, 2 maybe, right? Because the power of D2C is very different. I think we've done the background foundation and the infrastructure is kind of ready for a lot of these brands to come up, right? How important do you think is it's to create the right narrative, right? How important, or what is going to be the growing role of content, for example, in the entire space of D2C? What are your thoughts on it?
Very, very important. People at the end of the day, see the reason why people are moving from the brands of yesterday is because there's something missing that they're not able to find anymore.
Right.
How my mom may be connected with pears as a soap,
Right.
my wife isn't, connecting anymore. So what people eventually buy is the story only. We're all buying whatever brands we're buying because we believe in their story.
Right.
And content that way is one of, if not the most important, one of the most important pillars, for you to build this on. Because if you're not genuine in your storytelling, customers will call you a bluff. Because this is, these days people, there's social media available where they can look at your story. If there's inconsistency, they can you there. So it's important. The story is very important. The mission is very important. Genuine story is far more important. And creating the right content is equally critical. Because why should somebody choose me over my competition, which is maybe $5 cheaper?
Right.
Do they really care about the fact that we were the innovators? Do they genuinely believe that we were amongst the first ones, we were the innovators? So you have to now walk the talk. It's no more about just having it as a line item on your packaging, So very important, story. It's all stories. We all buy stories. This is a story in the making, right? Good or bad, time will tell. But
very interesting. Deep, I have a question around COVID, right? And I think a lot of answers that you've given, right? You kind of, in a way, very implicitly factored, some of those changes that have happened, right? But this is a slightly more specific question, right? And this is a question that I'm asking to a lot of founders, right? Is that COVID kind of changed the way we consume, right? It kind of disrupted what was set with us for, let's say, late 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever, right? It's one on one hand, of course, while it's made the relevance of, say, D2C brands higher, right? And of course, consumers have been relating with the narrative that they put out. What is also happening is there's a lot of noise, right? So not everybody is doing it the right way, right? Which essentially means that people are consuming a lot of things, right? Now there are two ways to look at it. One is, of course, there is a certain perception that they create in their mind. Second, that noise could also lead into a very quick movement of preferences, right? Because the exposure is a very different nature, right? The advantage that, for example, businesses had, right, because there was a certain supply chain that you had to do, and that worked as a defense for the business, right? Your competitor could not enter it as quickly, right? But here it can, which essentially means the product life cycle is going to change completely, right? What are your thoughts about it, right? I mean, it'll have to be very, very, companies will have to be very agile, right? What they're doing is cannot have a 5-year, 6-year horizon. They'll possibly have to do it for just about 18 months, 24 months, right? The fad might just change, right? What are your thoughts about this?
Well, so yes, I think depending on which category you are in, online is a brutal place as well. If you lose the momentum, you're gone. So it's going to be more around agility, more than anything else.
Right.
Because anybody can be a competition tomorrow morning. You might have thought of a solution. There are manufacturers available. The social media platforms are available for everybody. Marketplaces are available for everybody.
Right.
So agility is one of the most important things. But I also believe it is critical for you to understand that which race are you in. If you look at maybe a lot of soaps have come and gone, but Dettol is a standard fixture in everybody's house.
Right.
So, and that will not change. There'll be brands which will ride the wave of being a fad and become a part of your DNA, of a consumer's daily life cycle. So, depending on which tracks you're on, if you're in a brand which says that no, we're cosmetic, we're going to be fast, we'll improvise fast, we'll innovate fast, and we're cool with our previous products going out of sync, you will have to keep innovating at a like a razor fast pace.
Right.
As opposed to if you're saying we genuinely want to become a part of customers' life cycle, then your innovation needs to be on making the current product better and not as much about introducing new products.
Right.
And both the tracks are right. I mean, there are people who've done both, right? I mean, Bose might not be coming up with 100,000 models every year, or maybe not even 50, 20, 100 models. While there are brands which are into now audiovisual who are coming up with models every day. They're talking to a different audience.
Right.
So pick your audience and pick your battles. COVID certainly has changed a lot of things. Though I would say what it has done is it has fast-tracked the internet or the online e-commerce adoption by, if not more, I would say 5. This would have happened over 5 and 10 years, for Jio to, for all the tech companies to, or maybe mobile telephony or transactions to have happened over next 5 to 10 years has now happened in last 2 years. Though the last couple of years have been very interesting, with Jio taking the internet everywhere. and Corona happening right at the same time, and they stopped getting supplies, and they had the credit cards, and they had the Paytms, they had all the options available. That's what has happened. So there are more consumers online, certainly, which also means there are all kinds of consumers. So pick your consumers. If you're looking at, something that goes away fast and comes away fast, keep innovating faster. If you want to be part of the customer cycle, I'd say improve the current offering far better, because those brands stay.
Right. Very interesting. Deep, another question is that, and this is again, a constant, right, across pretty much all the conversations. I think this is something that everybody is trying to answer in some form or the other, right? Which is the Bharat narrative, right? Which is the Bharat side of the game, right? And that's a massive, massive opportunity, right? And on one hand, you have a huge consumer base, which is consuming content like there was, the way it's happening is absolutely bizarre, right? The user-generated content is kind of going through the roof, right? And we've seen examples, right? And there have been companies that have built largely on that engagement, right? But what is also happening is, so on one hand, of course, the exposure is very different, right? The arbitrage that was there between a tier A city and a tier 2 city, right, has kind of now decreased, right? Because of that availability of information, right? And entertainment content and so many other things, right? At that value. But what has also happened is that these are people who've still not experimented with certain things, right? So there are cultural, issues that they're still set in their own ways, right? That's one challenge which is there. Second, of course, is the challenge that, when you look at growth, right? Typically in urban market, growth is always higher than, what you're going to see in a tier 2 or a tier 3 city, right? In India, the complexity is much harder, is because, we have a lot of regional factors that sort of come in, right? Priorities are very, very different across all these regions, right? What are your thoughts about Bharat? I mean, how excited are you? How do you think this is an opportunity which is going to play out at a macro and at personal?
I think at the industry level, they're already part of the ecosystem. Buying behavior habits are different in urban India as well. Even in India, how we call it between India and Bharat. I say that within cities also, there are pockets which behave differently. So you have to just understand what are their needs and come up with products which solve their issues. They are consuming, they are buying, they have the buying power. They are far more open to trying than us, because we are fixed in our ways. We're used to a certain way of living.
Right.
It is a very exciting population coming on board, and I think we should make solutions for them, keeping their needs in mind. If we are able to crack that, it's a like gold mine, waiting to be owned. So I think very, very powerful buying power, and brands who get it right there will be, again, rewriting history for themselves.
Interesting.
Because now distribution, earlier they were left out of the mainstream product brands, because brands, at least D2C, personal care, our kind of brands would still have some certain shelf life, right?
Right.
Would have a price, have a shelf life. So your cost of experimenting in a little remote area was the logistics, reverse logistics, products expiring, not picking up, 100 shops, 1,000 shops, 10,000 shops. Where are you available? How many retailers? As opposed to now, where you're saying, I'm on Amazon, Flipkart, Nykaa, I'm on 100 other portals which are serving to D2C. If I can just get pricing and communication right and spread the right awareness through other platforms, I can fulfill the order.
Right.
So, yeah, so I'd say that it's a very interesting time for even the rest of India to be approached.
On that note, one question, right? Which is one city that you got an order from and you were surprised, right? That, what just happened, right? Has there been that moment?
Tinsukia, Northeast. I mean, everywhere. I'm saying it's not one. There are so many of them here in terms of places that I was just so surprised to see. And these are, you're looking at orders like menstrual cups. It's I believe it was urban. I'll first move urban India, and for rural, my thoughts were that we'll only put people who are below poverty line to it, so that they can have access to sustainable menstrual hygiene solutions. You're getting orders from all over, man. So it's very interesting, because you do not know where your informed customer is. Again, I'm saying it's not educated; it's informed.
Sure.
There is an audience which is not informed. They have consumed the content. English, Hindi, their regional language doesn't matter.
Right.
And she has the money available. So an informed customer could be sitting out of anywhere. So your demographics are no more the age-old way of going through SEC A plus, B plus. I think it's more about their needs. So the distinction now, the targeting should now not really happen because of just demographics alone. It should be need based.
Right.
So the customer could be anywhere, and we've had, like I said, yeah, it's okay.
Interesting. The one question, right? Now, essentially, what has happened after COVID is that, we've gotten into a very homogeneous environment, right? Because, essentially everybody's consuming from the same set of streets, right? Also my earlier question, right, which was about Bharat, right? And like you answered, right? It's all coming together. I think it's about awareness, and then, it's a degree higher, which is, once you have awareness, and then of course there's inquisitiveness, and then that translates into consumption, right? And that could really happen across the entire demographic scale that you have, right? And not necessarily the one you're targeting, right? It could evolve from there. I think the role of technology is going to increase in a big way, right? To help you comprehend what's going to come up, right? Because we've not experienced a situation like this, right? What are some of the things that you, for example, say implemented at Sirona, right, which help you navigate better, right? Or you think you're going to help you navigate better in the future, right? What's the prep on the technology front that you're doing?
Technology.
Yes.
Well, so we are in a phase where we are saying that let's not say no to anything new, that is coming up today. You don't know what is going to disrupt you overnight.
Sure.
So whether it is in terms of reaching out to customers using tech platform, or it is around creating a community using tech, or it is about simplifying payment solutions, logistics solutions, reverse logistics, everywhere. I mean, tech is playing an very important role.
Sure.
And I would say the philosophy should be don't say no to anything before trying. So try anything that helps you become efficient in your operations or customer engagement.
Right.
Should be a clear area. So we are doubling down on a team which is going to help us navigate the next 3 to 5 years far better, because data again, it's gold again. So if you have so much of value waiting to be unlocked in every operation that you're doing,
right?
And while obviously it's all brains are human, but there is technology can help you identify so many gaps at so many levels that you can't even imagine.
Absolutely. Right.
And there's value to be unlocked. Technology can help you immensely in doing it.
Sure. Deep, I have a very, this was not part of the, the set of questions that I had, right? But it's just, while I'm listening to you, it just sort of occurred to me, right? Take me through the feedback process that you have. I mean, you've been somebody who's been very, very absorbing, right? You've looked at a lot of, conversations that are happening, a lot of comments, for example, that are going out on social, right? So you've been very, very observant of all of these things, right? Give me a sense of, how has that, what's the feedback process? Is this an institutionalized process? Or is there an element of, say, intuition, right? When you see something saying that, listen, this could grow into a large market. And I know there's no definitive answer to it. It's a combination typically of the two, right? But tell me a sense of, give me a sense of institutionalization. Which bits have you institutionalized, and which are the bits that you, for example, which is observational, intuition driven, right? Saying that, listen, this is something, right? That's important. But you know what I mean, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'd say it is again, Ash, it's going to be a blend. When we started off, obviously, you were looking at anything and everything.
Sure.
The only thing we've done, I would say, rather okay, is to say that if there is a customer feedback coming from anywhere, because what happens is if you have a fixed way of looking at what customer is saying, there are many platforms where you tend to overlook them because you're just trying to finish whatever your KPIs say.
Sure.
So we started by saying, no matter where the customer is, whether it's on a Facebook or it's on a Quora or if it's on a Reddit, or it could be anywhere, any forum, if you have had any experience of our products or related problems that you're facing, we need to dig ways to get that information.
Sure.
And right now also, while there is institutionalization has happened at certain levels to say that, if there's somebody who's writing to us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, any sort of complaints, we have defined our tags to do it. But when it comes to customer feedback, we are still far more intuitive to say that let us not rule out any kind of comment, any feedback. Every feedback is looked at with the same kind of intensity as what we look at from an institutionalized process for us. So it is a blend. And I think that blend needs to continue. You cannot say that we are only going to be looking at whatever customers are writing on Amazon, Flipkarts, as a review, or what they're writing to us on our own. Even in our focus groups, even in our reviews, whatever team members are saying, what our vendors are saying, what our warehouse guys are saying, it is a part of the overall process right now. It's a blend of two.
Very interesting. Deep, this is a section that I've kind of I have for you in this conversation, right? And this is largely because this is not about Sirona, right? This is about Deep Bajaj, the individual, the leader, right? And
Sure.
how you've grown, right? And of course, I want to extract some of the learnings on a bunch of very critical issues, right? Because there are not a lot of people who one had the experience, right? So the kind of experience that you had, right? You've seen three cycles, right? To say, which was a pre 2011-12 cycle. Then of course there was a 2012 to say a 15, 16, 17 cycle, and then of course 17 and beyond, right? And of course now COVID, right? So there are not a lot of people who enjoy that kind of a that kind of a diversity, right?
Right.
And also that gives you a very different kind of and if you're sharp and if you're observant, right, you see the consumer behavior and patterns change, right? Which is so much more important because that also helps you relate with an India which operates at a layer below, right? Which is not necessarily very urban, which is not necessarily millennial, which is beyond all of these things, right? So this is more too deep, right? In terms of how do you view these things, and what should a lot of other founders who are building for a D2C should sort of look at, right? So the first one is that what's your thought on branding, right? How do you go about creating the right resonance? How do you go about creating a right brand, right? What are some of the key things that you should look at when you're creating a brand, right? Especially in a D2C environment, where it's a very, very transparent environment. People are very vocal. There are no inhibitions. What are your thoughts on branding, right? How important is it today? And what are some, say, possibly the 2 or 3 critical steps that any founder should look at when you're creating a good, relevant, strong brand?
So more than the traditional ways of defining what our brand architecture and
Sure.
everything else, I'm sure that'll be taken care of. I think what has changed drastically is people want to know more, about your story. So just be
Right.
authentic in your story.
Sure.
Define what you're doing, stay on course,
Right.
and just walk the talk. Very, very important. And that should reflect across. So I'm not saying be a natural brand, but if you're a natural brand, then right from your packaging to your team to your, end of life product, map the entire journey. If you're
Right.
saying that we're an inclusive organization, it needs to be shown in the way you are, hiring people, the way you're
Sure.
firing people, the way you are,
Right.
engaging with the environment. If you're talking about we're an environmentally conscious organization, then what kind of a material. So in a sense, whatever narrative you're
Right.
saying, be sure that you can see it through, or at least be a work in progress.
Interesting.
Let it just not be a lip service. I'm not saying brands earlier did it, but I'm saying right now, if
Right.
you launch a brand and if there are gaps, the chances of people finding out is far higher, and
Sure.
chance of people knowing it at mass are far, far higher because of the social media
Right.
that has happened now. So important for you to, at the brand level, be clear in your story and be honest with it. Stay
Right.
in touch with customers, extremely important in that process.
Sure.
So those are my thoughts on branding per se, having seen the transition.
But listen, I mean, there are like a lot of brands that are coming up, right? Which are in the same space, which are like, almost there, right? So you
Yeah.
kind of what you're dealing with as a founder is almost like a 99% replication, right? How do you differentiate yourself in a setting like that?
Well, I'd say that it's a large market. Yeah, there'll be,
Right.
like you said, there'll be 100,000 brands perhaps, and I don't know the number, but I'd say yes, there are brands being born every day, and you can't stop that. What you can stop is how do you treat your team, your customers, your shareholders. That's very,
Right.
very important.
Right.
So our niche would be maybe when we started off, I did not really have a pact with the god to say that nobody else will get into this space. I
Sure.
opted, right? I mean, yeah, I opted for this place.
I like the way you put it.
Yeah, and in a sense, and with irrespective of what business I've done, whether it was events, you're not the only one. When I got into carpets, you're not the only one. When I tried home healthcare or something else, I was not the only one. So I don't know why saying that it is going to be what. How do you differentiate yourself? I'm saying what we need to differentiate ourselves is from what we were doing last year and what we're doing now. Have we become better? Are we still relevant for our customers? And I think that's where the obsession needs to be. Are you really? Do you continue to make a difference in your customer's life? That's the only value add you can do, man.
Interesting.
And and that's the single-handed thing that we look at here. There'll be 100 brands will come in with the same product. It's good, yeah. It's good for the category. More people talking about the same things. That's how taboos go away.
Very
So we
interesting.
are happy that there are more people coming into it, and we are also happy that they're also doing same stuff as us. What we
Right.
are trying to do is how do we stay relevant, and that's a
Sure.
question that it's not about how do we differentiate ourselves from them who are
Right.
maybe using the same kind of a narrative and same products. Our question is how do we stay relevant in our customers' lives? I mean,
Right.
if the customer is moving to somebody else for 5 rupees cheaper, then maybe I've done something wrong, or maybe I'm talking to the wrong customer.
Right. Interesting. The and when I hear what you're saying, right? I think one constant which is going to be there, and when you're saying this, right, in my mind, what I'm thinking is that it's so important for a founder. It's become so important for a founder to step up and kind of face the audience, right? I think the role of a founder has kind of changed, right? But a founder cannot do that all the time, or the founding team cannot do it all the time, right? You'll have to build a DNA which
Yeah.
understands and operates at that level, right?
Yeah.
Because as soon as you have employee mindset, the lag will
Yeah.
start to build up, which essentially means you'll eventually land up losing,
True.
right? Which is my next question to you, right?
Yeah.
What else? What are say the top 2 or 3 things that a Deep would do, right, to cultivate intrapreneurship within the organization, to create right kind of a leadership culture, to create a responsible set of people who can carry the brand, handle the brand, right?
Sure.
Even beyond the individual, right? How do you
Agreed.
do that? How do you do
So
that?
I would say clearly defining again what you stand for and writing it on every possible wall and bringing it in every review
Sure.
is very, very important, because
Right.
everybody needs to understand why do we exist. The why of the
Right.
organization has to be clear to everybody, and that's work in progress. But if
Right.
you're committed, if it's a metric at which you are evaluating yourself, like when we are doing reviews, we do funny things like, who can just tell me the mission right now and I'll give you 500 rupees. Stupid.
Interesting.
Stupid stuff. But we do it way too often,
Right.
right? To say that, and that's the only way. I mean, it has to be hard coded in the team to say,
Right.
this is what we do and this is
Sure.
why we exist. So I would say two things. One is defining why we exist,
Right.
having it replicated everywhere, and a constant reiteration of that across level, whether it's induction or it's exits.
Right.
Very, very critical for you to ensure that that you stay relevant.
Right.
That's number one. And second is also, once you've defined, having a very clear metric to measure it.
Right.
Whether you use OKRs or you use BSCs, which is something that Stanford talks about. OKR is used by Google. So any of the frameworks, once you've grown at a certain stage, by certain time,
Right.
when you're there when you've done the initial phase for me is like a couple of years you've done.
Sure.
It's very, because you can't do everything at the same time. So having that patience also, Rome wasn't built in a day, is important. First phase should be all about that hustle to say, I will find my customer and I'll champion that. Who's
Right.
my customer, right? And
Absolutely.
where all can I find them?
Right.
Second phase is, how do I serve them in the most efficient fashion?
Right.
And that is where some of these things come into play. Two of them will be having a very clear vision, mission, core values that you stand for, and a constantly iteration of it. Second part to that is having metrics to measure it.
Right.
So your should have an organization level, OKR and balance scorecard perhaps, which we are now working on, and it started to show, because as you grow,
right,
the guys who are closer to the core founding team know the story at the back of their hand. It's a new guy, especially what COVID has done is everybody's being inducted virtually.
Sure.
How do we tell them that we are so passionate about our work that we have a foundation that we've registered and we are really working on the ground level? Saying it just on a video and actually experiencing it on ground are two different things.
Absolutely.
So it's equally important to have metric in place where you can measure it.
Right. Interesting. Deep, how do you cultivate innovation, right? At Sirona, otherwise, what are your thoughts? I mean, so my belief is that, unless you empower people, unless you make them, responsible, or make them a part of, the innovation process, right?
Yeah.
I think you're kind of limiting yourself. You're limiting existence, right? You're kind of, in a way, compromising on your longevity, right? Thus, it becomes important that, you continue to have more stakeholders, employees, team members to come in and, be part of the innovation process, right? What are your thoughts about it, right? How have you been doing, and, what are your thoughts that should be that, the way should be that?
I would say that having a flattish organization, and again, once you define why you exist, and you've defined your organization level OKRs and BSCs or whatever you're following, once you start measuring it, some of these things, will come out intuitively to you at that stage. Like in our case, we are saying, if you ask us the 4 pillars on which we are trying to make our company, I'll say that we'll be customer obsessed. So how do we measure it? So whether it's NPS or CSATs or all the other things. We'll be financially prudent. How do you measure it? At the warehouse level, at the execution level, at the customer level, all of that. We're saying that we'll always have a soul, so our paid forward environment, all of that comes out. And the fourth is we'll stay innovative. So when we've committed that we'll stay innovative and we are measuring, then we start thinking at the ground level that how do you innovate across the organization? It's not being products.
Right.
It's a process innovation is also innovation.
Absolutely.
So we have now put up, these out of these 4 values, we have put it across the divisions. All the divisions have to will be evaluated on these 4 parameters. Like, what did you do to really wow the customer? How did you innovate in your steps? So decentralization of some of the core values is something that can help you stay relevant. And in our case, At the organization, we are saying that, if we come up with a mass product, there has to be at least 2 innovations. So it's a commitment that we made. So now if somebody comes and just gives an idea, the person also knows that is an innovation, it's a mass product, or it's just an incremental innovation.
Very interesting.
So building it in the DNA, by saying that it's a flattish organization, and whatever we are saying is not the ownership of the founders or the core team. Everybody owns the company. Everybody is responsible for these 4 things. So suggestions are welcome everywhere. My peon got, let's say, last time, he suggested something and we launched a product and he got $2,000, as a product selection idea. So I think having everyone knowing the 4 core that you exist and how it translates into your job, makes it easier. But then again, you know what, Ashu, there's no one formula to it.
I know.
Stuff that you do, some of them go right, some of them go wrong. And that's the story of everyone's lives.
I think the only constant is where you can make the process of communication easy, right?
Yes.
And like you said, right, make a flattish organization where there are no inhibitions. There is, one can come in and talk and and be freely sort of be part of the process and stuff like that, right? I like some of the points that you highlighted, right? And I think also it leads into the point that you highlighted earlier, Deep, which was about agility, right? That organizations will have to be agile, which essentially means you'll have to have 20 hands and possibly 20 pair of eyes, right? And I think institutionalizing some of this bits, right, and making people who are with you in the organization, the process of it, will essentially lead into a better agile environment, right? Which helps you understand your customer better, helps you deal with your competition better, and continuously think of either incremental innovation or a new product innovation or a process innovation. So I think that really sort of brings all of it together, right? In a very beautiful way. Deep, what are some of the things that you're excited about in the D2C space, right? At a more macro level, right? Outside of your business, I'm sure you've been fortunate enough to have a look at some of those pieces. You understand the execution side of D2C, right? And you understand the consumer, and you are a thinking individual, right? And I'm sure you're not only limited to the intricacies of your business, right? You, as a consumer, also you're looking at many other businesses, right? What are some of the opportunities that you are excited about the D2C environment?
I think I'm excited about entrepreneurship. I just love people trying to come up with solutions. That keeps me young, So I think I'm really excited about how the younger lot, whether you call them millennials or Gen Zs, are so confident, so open to risk. Some of these things which were almost didn't exist in our growing up, right? I mean, it was, while my parents didn't really ever stop me from doing anything, but even the opportunities didn't exist. So I'm so excited about the younger lot coming up with newer ideas and trying to disrupt the contemporaries, not really scared of, like, recently, Pharmacy bought Thyrocare, man. I mean, can you, so exciting to see stuff like this happening. Not at that level, even at the junior level, I would say. Newer solutions, entrepreneurship excites me, and I'm sure next 3-4 years are going to be far more interesting, and there'll be a lot of fun.
Would you want to name a bunch of guys you're particularly excited about? You think they're rock stars in the mix?
I would say there are many. I mean, there's not one. There are people who've. I mean, it'll be unfair to just call out one or two, but I just love the spark that I've seen in some of these. Like, there's the startup which was earlier called Nothing Else, and I think now they call The Whole Truth. They have these interesting Nutri bars. I just love what the founder is doing with coming up with stuff around. He's basically trying to demystify all the ingredients that you see at the back of the pack. And, it's really taking on some heat head on. So Shashank that way, and other. What Licious did yesterday again created a history of sorts. Raising almost $200 million for a D2C brand. In the in the fresher lot. Many. I mean, there's so many.
I know. That's an unfair question. I think
I know. I don't want to say one or two. There are hundreds, and everybody's doing a good job. Boat is doing a good job. MKFN is doing a good job. I'm saying, but even the youngest ones are rocking it, and I'm looking forward to next 4-5 years.
Interesting. Deep, towards the end of the conversation, what are the next 2? It's cliched, right? 5 years is cliched, right? I'd rather say what the next 2 years like, right? We're in very dynamic times. It's a very interesting time, right? There's money which is moving. You've been extremely prudent the way you raise capital, and you raise capital from some very credible, investment, players in the market. What are the next 2 years, 2.5 years like for Sirona, right?
In the game, my friend.
What is keeping you, super excited about, what are the possibilities that are keeping you super excited?
Well, I think it's just about what keeps us anxious is staying relevant for our customers. What keeps us excited is the fact that, we have now some really exciting folks on the team,
Right.
the talent that we couldn't afford earlier. So
Right.
that's exciting. And the way this entire ecosystem is changing is keeping us supercharged. We're very confident of, though we were always very clear that
Right.
we're not here for a short haul. We're not in a
Right.
sprint. We're in a marathon. So for us, 2 years is more about saying, let's stay on course. Let's stay in the game.
Right.
Let's not, I mean, we anyways don't get overconfident. So we are more
Right.
about under commit and over deliver.
Right.
That's the philosophy, and we'll continue to do that over the next 2 years. But yeah, most important is, which is my one last advice to everybody, is just staying positive. Very, very important. Yeah. So if you can just stay positive, so the first 3 years, you'll crack it.
Deep, that's a classical Deep, right? Not giving away too much, right? And yet,
Yeah, I don't have too much to give, honestly. I'm just telling you what I believe in, man. I'm honestly, I'm telling you that at business level, there are no hacks.
Right.
You will learn your own playbook, man. Ashu, even
Absolutely.
if you pick up the playbook of, let's say, Forbes and Fortunes, what you're building, also when in the academy, also, you will build it because of your signature style. So it's more about understanding what makes you tick and then acing it. Then saying that if I'm a founder who believes that I can be persistent, then I don't want to be any other founder who's in a rush.
Absolutely.
I'll just stay in my game and I'll play to my advantage. And that's the only one way advice that I give everybody. Please stay. Just be comfortable with yourself. You're one of a kind, obviously.
Right.
So,
my last question to you, Rich, which is more generic, which is more mental level, point of view for a lot of founders, right? How important is prioritization? How important do you think is to prioritize, your key goals, your key matrices, how important is it to prioritize?
Very important, but equally important, I would say, is because business level, you will find your way. Business level, I've told you that, right? Just ensure that for 1,000 days, you're in the game. You don't give up before 1,000 days. You will understand it eventually.
Right.
You will understand what is your secret sauce. And nobody's playbook can be yours. So, but equally critical is keeping your mental balance in place and prioritizing that too.
Right.
In the top of the list, because the only responsibility that you have as a founder is to be in the game, and the only way you can do it if you're positive. You are positive, you will take on anything in life, and then there'll be good days and bad days, obviously. But you should know how to deal with those bad days. So you're playing, you're right now on the crease, you're playing, you're facing the balls, deliveries, and so you need to just be absolutely at ease. So I'm saying prioritizing your own self is far, far, far more important than what format works for your organization, because format will change. But if you at the mental level here are not aligned, then no format will work. So hang out with the right people. Yeah, stay away from energy vampires. Concept that I keep talking about, which a monk told me in New York. He said that all of us are made of energy, and I don't know if I'm crossing my time on this one, but would love to share if I have time on that.
No, sure, please go ahead.
No, so what he says is that we're all made up of energy, which is true, right? I mean, the day energy is out, we are dead. And there are people that you meet and they instantly light you up, and there are people that you meet and instantly suck your energy out. And what is important for you as a founder or even as an individual is to be cognizant of who is sucking your energy and who is empowering you. And many a times people who are in your life might be very close to you, but they might be energy vampires. Could be a mom, dad, cousin, whoever. They say one statement which ticks you off and you're just off.
Yeah,
you just
I know.
It's important that some people that you cannot eliminate out of your life, but you know how to deal with them. The minute you know that this person is my energy vampire, I switch off after some time. So I'll sit with you, I'll talk to you, but if I know that I don't need to let this become a part of my thought process, I don't need to give your thoughts that much importance, I switch off. So as a founder, please ensure that your mental balance, so your energy vampire list is ready. So that if you meet them, even if they're investors, your advice could be anybody, and they might not necessarily mean you're bad.
Right.
But you know when to switch off. So prioritize your tasks, yes, but prioritize yourself too. Very, very important. And just remember, if you're at it, you will crack it.
You make Johnny Walker look so relevant, right?
Keep walking.
Keep walking, right? I think with that Deep, it was a pleasure to talk to you, right? I mean, I've always enjoyed my conversations with you. I think, I wanted to take it to the next level by, making it visible to many, many people, right? And I think what you bring is a very different kind of energy, right? And I think the way you're approaching it with so much pragmatism, I think is so much more important, right? And I think you're a leader who's built some very, very interesting pieces within the organization. I think the way you've cultivated the DNA is phenomenal. I think that the way you're looking at the market is incredible, right? Look forward to having you with us across many, many conversations. Thank you so much for
Likewise.
taking the time. It
Always a
was a
pleasure.
pleasure. It was a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Thanks,
Thank you
Steve.
so much. Best of luck to you, and hope our paths cross again.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye-bye.